The air was crisp and cool as Alex Ivanov stepped off the transport vehicle that had brought him to Windsor Castle. The towering stone walls loomed ahead, their ancient bricks whispering stories of centuries past. For a man like Alex, who had spent most of his life in the harsh, unforgiving landscapes of Siberia, this place felt almost alien. But he wasn't here for sightseeing or admiration. He was here on official duty, a temporary assignment as part of an international coalition mission. Though the thought of working alongside soldiers from other nations didn't excite him, it was his responsibility. And Alex took responsibilities seriously. As he adjusted the strap of his duffel bag over his shoulder, a figure approached him. She was shorter than he expected, with neatly tied back blonde hair and an expression so calm it bordered on unreadable. Her uniform was impeccable, every button polished, every crease sharp enough to cut paper. "Welcome to Windsor Castle," she said, her voice steady but warm. "I'm Lieutenant Emily Dawson. I'll be your liaison during your stay." Alex gave her a quick once-over before nodding. "Lieutenant Ivanov," he replied curtly, omitting his first name intentionally. It wasn't arrogance, it was habit. In his world, rank spoke louder than anything else. Emily extended a hand which Alex shook briefly. His grip was firm, perhaps too firm, but Emily didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled politely and gestured toward the castle gates. "If you'll follow me, I'll show you to your quarters. We can discuss the schedule for the next few days after you've settled in." Alex grunted in acknowledgement and followed her lead. As they walked through the grand courtyard surrounded by guards standing at attention and visitors marveling at the architecture, Alex couldn't help but feel out of place. These weren't battle-hardened warriors. They were ceremonial soldiers, their duties more about pageantry than combat. Still, he reminded himself not to underestimate them. Appearances could be deceiving. Their path led them into one of the castle's many corridors, where portraits of monarchs long gone lined the walls. The silence was almost oppressive, broken only by the sound of their footsteps echoing against the stone floor. Finally, Emily stopped in front of a heavy wooden door and handed Alex a key. "This will be your room for the duration of your stay," she explained. "Dinner is served promptly at 7 in the main hall. Attendance isn't mandatory, but it's encouraged." "Understood," Alex replied, his tone clipped. He unlocked the door and stepped inside, taking in the modest furnishings: a bed, a desk, and a small wardrobe. Functional, but nothing luxurious, just how he liked it. Before leaving, Emily added, "There's a briefing tomorrow morning at 9. Captain Harper will go over the details of the upcoming ceremony. Try not to be late." With that, she turned and left, her boots clicking softly against the floor until the sound faded entirely. Alone in his room, Alex dropped his bag onto the bed and exhaled deeply. The weight of unfamiliarity pressed down on him, but he pushed it aside. He'd faced worse situations before, and this was no different. Or so he told himself. The next morning came quickly. After a restless night spent staring at the ceiling, Alex made his way to the designated briefing room. Inside, a group of officers from various countries sat around a large table, exchanging polite conversation. At the head of the table stood Captain Lewis Harper, a tall man with piercing blue eyes and an aura of authority that demanded respect. Beside him was Emily, jotting notes onto a clipboard. When Alex entered, all eyes turned to him. Some nodded in greeting, others simply watched curiously. Ignoring their stares, Alex took a seat near the end of the table, positioning himself strategically, so he could observe everyone without appearing vulnerable. Captain Harper began the meeting by outlining the objectives of the coalition mission. "Our goal is to strengthen international cooperation through shared traditions and mutual understanding," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "The ceremony scheduled for later this week is not just a display of military precision, it's a symbol of unity." Alex listened intently, though his brow furrowed slightly at the mention of traditions. To him, tradition often meant rigidity, something that could hinder progress rather than foster it. But he kept his thoughts to himself, for now. As Harper continued explaining the logistics of the event, Alex noticed Emily glancing at him occasionally. Her gaze wasn't hostile, but there was something probing about it, as if she were trying to gauge his reaction. He met her stare briefly before looking away, focusing instead on Harper's words. When the captain opened the floor for questions, Alex raised his hand almost immediately. "What happens if someone doesn't adhere to protocol?" he asked bluntly. "Not everyone here operates under the same rules." Harper paused, considering the question. "Protocol exists to ensure order and cohesion," he replied evenly. "While we respect individual differences, adherence to established guidelines is non-negotiable during the ceremony." Alex nodded, though his expression remained skeptical. He glanced at Emily again, who seemed unfazed by his challenge. If anything, she looked amused, though she hid it well. After the briefing concluded, Alex lingered behind while others filed out of the room. Harper approached him, offering a handshake. "Glad to have you aboard, Lieutenant Ivanov," he said warmly. "Your expertise will be invaluable." "Thank you, sir," Alex responded, shaking the offered hand firmly. "I'll do my best to contribute." Once Harper departed, Emily approached him. "How are you settling in?" she asked, her tone casual but professional. "Well enough," Alex replied, "though I still think some of these protocols are excessive." Emily tilted her head slightly, studying him. "They might seem that way at first," she admitted, "but once you understand the reasoning behind them, you'll see why they're important." Alex crossed his arms over his chest, his skepticism evident. "We'll see." Over the course of the day, Alex observed the interactions between members of the Royal Guard and the visiting delegates. They moved with purpose, each action deliberate and precise. Even the simplest tasks, like standing at attention or saluting, were carried out with a level of discipline that impressed him, though he'd never admit it aloud. Later that afternoon, Alex found himself wandering near the practice grounds, where groups of soldiers rehearsed formations for the upcoming ceremony. Curiosity got the better of him, and he stopped to watch. Among the participants was Emily, leading a group of junior officers through a series of intricate maneuvers. Her commands were clear and concise, and her subordinates responded instantly, moving in perfect unison. Alex couldn't deny the skill on display, but pride prevented him from fully appreciating it. Instead, he focused on what he perceived as flaws, minor hesitations, slight misalignments. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to fuel his belief that his methods were superior. As the practice session ended, Emily noticed him standing nearby. She walked over, wiping sweat from her brow. "Enjoying the show?" she teased lightly. "It's impressive," Alex conceded reluctantly, "but I imagine things would run smoother with a bit more flexibility." Emily chuckled softly. "Flexibility has its place," she agreed. "But when it comes to representing our country, consistency is key." Alex frowned, mulling over her words. There was wisdom in them, even if he wasn't ready to acknowledge it yet. By evening, Alex returned to his quarters feeling both frustrated and intrigued. The people here were unlike any he'd encountered before, disciplined, proud, yet strangely welcoming. He knew he had much to learn, whether he wanted to admit it or not, and deep down a small part of him looked forward to seeing what else this experience might hold. The next morning, Alex woke up earlier than usual. He had always been a man who preferred action over waiting, and the quiet stillness of Windsor Castle made him restless. After a quick shower and a glance at his reflection in the mirror, he noticed the faint stubble on his jaw but decided against shaving. He grabbed his uniform and headed to the mess hall for breakfast. The dining area was already bustling with activity when he arrived. Soldiers from different countries mingled, their conversations blending into a low hum of voices. Most of them greeted him with polite nods or smiles as he entered, but Alex didn't linger. He picked up a tray, loaded it with scrambled eggs, toast and coffee, and found an empty table near the corner. He preferred solitude, especially in unfamiliar settings, and the quiet spot gave him time to think. As he ate, his mind wandered back to the previous day's events. The briefing, the practice session, Emily's calm demeanor, it all replayed in his head like a loop. There was something about her that unsettled him, though he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Was it her confidence? Her ability to stay composed even when challenged? Or was it simply the fact that she represented everything he thought he didn't need: tradition, formality, and restraint? His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching. Looking up, he saw Emily standing beside his table, holding a cup of tea. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, her tone light but direct. Alex hesitated for a moment before shrugging. "Go ahead." She sat down across from him, placing her cup carefully on the table. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Emily broke the silence. "How are you finding everything so far?" "It's fine," Alex replied, choosing his words cautiously. "Different from what I'm used to, but manageable." Emily smiled faintly. "That's good to hear. Adjusting to new environments can be tough, especially when there are so many rules involved." "Rules," Alex muttered under his breath, shaking his head slightly. "Seems like half the work here is just memorizing protocol." "Well, it's not just about following orders," Emily explained. "It's about showing respect for history, for each other, and for the roles we play. Without that foundation, nothing else holds together." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Respect doesn't win battles." "No, but it builds trust," Emily countered. "And trust keeps people alive. You'd know that better than anyone, wouldn't you?" Her question caught him off guard. For a moment, Alex considered arguing further, but something in her expression stopped him. It wasn't smugness or superiority. It was genuine curiosity, as if she truly wanted to understand his perspective. Before he could respond, a bell rang, in the distance signaling the start of another training session. Emily stood up, brushing imaginary crumbs from her uniform. "I should get going. We're running drills this morning. If you want, you're welcome to watch." "I'll think about it," Alex said noncommittally. She nodded and walked away, leaving him alone with his thoughts once again. Later that afternoon, Alex decided to take Emily up on her offer. He told himself it was purely professional, to observe how things operated, but deep down he knew there was more to it. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was curiosity. Either way, he found himself heading toward the practice grounds, where the rhythmic clatter of boots hitting pavement filled the air. When he arrived, Emily was already leading a group of recruits through a series of movements. They moved in perfect synchronization, their steps crisp and measured. Every turn, every salute, every pause seemed choreographed to perfection. Alex watched silently from the sidelines, arms crossed over his chest, analyzing every detail. At one point, Emily called out a command and the group shifted into a new formation. One recruit stumbled slightly, breaking the otherwise flawless sequence. Immediately, Emily stepped forward, her voice firm but not harsh. "Focus, Private. Remember your position. This isn't just about you. It's about the team." The young soldier straightened up, nodding quickly. "Yes, ma'am." Alex couldn't help but notice how quickly the mistake was corrected, how seamlessly the group recovered. It reminded him of his own training days, though his methods had always leaned more toward discipline through intensity rather than patience. After the drill ended, Emily dismissed the recruits and turned to see Alex standing nearby. "What did you think?" she asked, her tone casual but probing. "It's efficient," Alex admitted grudgingly. "But I'm not convinced it's practical. In real combat situations, perfection isn't always possible." "That's true," Emily agreed. "But preparation creates resilience. When chaos hits, and it will, you fall back on what you've practiced until it becomes instinct." Alex frowned, mulling over her words. There was logic in them, even if it clashed with his instincts. Still, he wasn't ready to concede entirely. Instinct is important, sure, but adaptability matters more. Your formations are rigid. What happens when someone breaks rank? Emily tilted her head, considering the question. Then we adjust, but the key is having a strong foundation to build from. Without structure, adaptation becomes chaos. Her answer frustrated him, not because it was wrong, but because it made sense. He hated the idea of being wrong, especially in front of someone like her. Changing the subject, Alex gestured toward the recruits gathering their gear. "Do you train all of them personally?" "Some of them," Emily replied. "Others are led by senior officers. My role is to ensure everyone understands the importance of what we're doing, not just for themselves, but for the reputation of the Guard." "And you expect everyone to follow blindly?" Alex asked, skepticism creeping into his voice. "I expect them to trust the process," Emily corrected. "Trust isn't blind obedience. It's earned through consistency and mutual respect." Alex opened his mouth to argue but stopped himself. Arguing with Emily felt like trying to cut water with a knife. No matter how hard he pushed, she always managed to redirect the conversation back to her point of view. It was infuriating, but also oddly impressive. That evening, after dinner, Alex found himself wandering the castle grounds again. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the cobblestone paths. He wasn't sure why he kept returning to the same spots, but there was something calming about the quiet solitude. That was until he heard footsteps behind him. Turning around, he saw Emily walking toward him, her hands tucked into the pockets of her coat. "You seem to enjoy taking walks," she remarked, falling into step beside him. "It helps clear my head," Alex admitted. "Too much sitting around makes me restless." Emily nodded knowingly. "I get that. Sometimes I come out here to think too." They walked in companionable silence for a while, the only sounds coming from the rustling leaves and distant chatter of soldiers heading indoors. Eventually, Emily spoke again. "You know, Lieutenant, I've worked with a lot of foreign officers over the years. Each one brings something unique to the table. Some bring strength, others bring strategy, and some—" She paused, glancing at him sidelong. "Bring challenges." Alex smirked despite himself. "Is that what I am? A challenge?" "In a way," Emily admitted, "but not in a bad sense. Challenging ideas make us grow, just like challenging people." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and saw something in her eyes that surprised him. It wasn't judgment or condescension, it was understanding. For the first time since arriving at Windsor Castle, Alex felt like someone might actually see him beyond his rank or nationality. "You're not what I expected," he said finally, his voice softer than usual. Emily smiled. "Neither are you." As they continued walking, Alex realized that perhaps this assignment wouldn't be as straightforward as he'd initially thought. There were lessons to be learned here, not just about protocol or tradition, but about himself. And maybe, just maybe, Emily Dawson would end up teaching him more than he anticipated. The days passed quickly, and Alex found himself settling into a routine he hadn't expected. Mornings began with briefings led by Captain Harper, followed by hours of observing, or sometimes participating in, the training sessions organized by Emily and her team. Though he still questioned the necessity of certain protocols, Alex couldn't deny the precision and discipline displayed by the Royal Guard. It was unlike anything he'd seen before, and while his pride resisted admitting it, he was starting to feel a grudging respect for their methods. One evening, after another long day of drills and discussions, Alex decided to take a detour on his way back to his quarters. Instead of heading straight indoors, he wandered toward the castle's practice hall. The large wooden doors were slightly ajar, and faint sounds of movement drew him closer. Peering inside, he saw Emily and a senior guard named Daniel Hughes rehearsing movements for the upcoming ceremony. Their steps were perfectly synchronized, each motion flowing seamlessly into the next. Even from a distance, Alex could see the effortlessness with which they executed even the most intricate maneuvers. Curiosity got the better of him, and he stepped inside quietly, careful not to disturb them. For several minutes, he watched unnoticed. His arms crossed over his chest as he studied their technique. There was something mesmerizing about the way they moved, not just physically, but mentally. They seemed to anticipate each other's actions, communicating without words. It was teamwork at its finest, and Alex couldn't help but feel a pang of admiration. Eventually, Emily noticed him standing there. She stopped mid-movement and turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "Lieutenant Ivanov," she said, her voice calm but tinged with surprise. "Is there something you need?" Alex hesitated, caught off guard by the question. He hadn't planned on being discovered, let alone explaining himself. "No," he replied finally. "I was just curious." Emily exchanged a glance with Daniel, who shrugged and stepped aside. "We're almost done here," she told him. "Feel free to stay if you'd like." For a moment, Alex considered leaving, but something held him back. Instead, he nodded and leaned against the wall, watching silently as Emily and Daniel resumed their practice. When they finished, Daniel excused himself, leaving Alex and Emily alone in the dimly lit hall. "You're good," Alex said abruptly, breaking the silence. His tone was neutral, but the compliment hung in the air between them. "Thank you," Emily replied, wiping sweat from her brow. "It takes years of practice to get it right." "Years?" Alex echoed, raising an eyebrow. "Seems like a lot of effort for something so ceremonial." "It's not just about the ceremony," Emily explained. "Every movement has meaning. Every step tells a story. To master it is to understand the weight of what we represent." Alex frowned, mulling over her words. He wanted to argue, to point out that practical skills mattered more than symbolic gestures, but he couldn't find the right words. Instead, he changed the subject. "How long did it take you to learn all this?" "A long time," Emily admitted, with a small smile. "When I first joined, I struggled too. It wasn't easy learning to balance tradition with modern demands, but eventually, it became second nature." Her honesty surprised him. In his experience, people rarely admitted weakness, especially not someone like Emily, who carried herself with such confidence. "Sounds frustrating," he muttered. "It was," she agreed. "But frustration is part of growth. You can't improve without pushing yourself." Alex looked away, staring at the polished floor beneath his boots. Her words resonated with him in ways he didn't fully understand. Growing up, he had always been taught to push through challenges without hesitation, to never show doubt or vulnerability. Yet here was Emily, openly acknowledging her struggles and framing them as stepping stones rather than failures. After a moment of silence, Alex cleared his throat. "Do you think someone like me could ever learn that kind of discipline?" Emily tilted her head, studying him carefully. "Why not? Discipline isn't exclusive to anyone. It's about commitment and patience. If you're willing to put in the work, there's no reason you can't succeed." Her response caught him off guard. He hadn't expected encouragement, let alone genuine belief in his potential. For a split second, he felt a flicker of hope. A possibility that maybe, just maybe, he could bridge the gap between his world and hers. "I might regret asking this," Alex said slowly. "But would you teach me some basics, just to see if I can keep up?" To his relief, Emily didn't laugh or dismiss him. Instead, she smiled warmly. "All right, but only if you promise to approach it with humility. This isn't about proving a point, it's about learning." Alex hesitated, unused to making promises like that. Pride had always been his shield, protecting him from failure and criticism. But looking at Emily now, he realized that maybe it was time to lower his guard. "Fine," he said finally, "I'll try." Over the next few nights, Alex joined Emily in the practice hall for private lessons. At first, he struggled to grasp even the simplest movements. His natural inclination was to power through tasks with brute force, but Emily insisted on precision and control. "It's not about strength," she reminded him repeatedly. "It's about focus." Each session tested his patience, but Emily remained patient with him, offering corrections gently yet firmly. "Relax your shoulders," she instructed during one particularly difficult maneuver. "You're holding too much tension. Let your body flow naturally." Alex exhaled sharply, trying to follow her advice. Slowly, his movements became smoother, though far from perfect. "This is harder than it looks," he admitted reluctantly. That's because it's supposed to be, Emily replied. If it were easy, everyone would do it. Despite the challenges, Alex found himself enjoying the process. There was something satisfying about mastering a skill he'd once dismissed as unnecessary, and though he wouldn't admit it aloud, he appreciated Emily's guidance. Her teaching style was firm but kind, pushing him to improve without making him feel inferior. As the nights went on, their conversations expanded beyond training. Emily shared stories about her childhood, growing up in a small town where military service ran in her family. My father was a soldier, she explained. He used to tell me that true strength comes from knowing when to fight and when to stand down. Alex listened intently, finding parallels between her experiences and his own. Though their backgrounds were different, they both understood the weight of responsibility and the sacrifices demanded by duty. In turn, Alex opened up about his life in Russia, describing the harsh winters and rigorous training programs that shaped him into the man he was today. Survival was everything, he said. If you weren't strong enough, you didn't last. Emily nodded thoughtfully. That must have been tough. It was, Alex admitted. But it taught me resilience. Maybe too much resilience. She smiled softly. There's no such thing as too much resilience. Just remember, even the strongest steel can bend without breaking. Her words lingered in his mind long after their sessions ended. Each night, as he returned to his quarters, Alex reflected on how much he'd learned, not just about the Royal Guard's traditions, but about himself. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of humility creeping into his worldview, softening the edges of his rigid beliefs. By the end of the week, Alex's progress was noticeable. While he was still far from perfect, his movements had improved significantly. During one session, Emily paused and looked at him with approval. Not bad, she said. You're starting to get the hang of it. Thanks to you, Alex replied, surprising himself with the sincerity in his voice. Emily chuckled lightly. Don't give me all the credit. You're the one putting in the effort. They stood there for a moment, sharing a rare moment of mutual respect. For Alex, it was a turning point, a realization that growth often came from unexpected places. And for Emily, it was proof that even the most stubborn individuals could change when given the chance. As they packed up for the night, Alex glanced at her and said, I owe you one. You don't owe me anything, Emily responded. Just keep learning. That's all I ask. With those words, Alex knew he was on the right path, not just as a soldier, but as a person. The days leading up to the ceremony were filled with a mix of tension and anticipation. Alex found himself spending more time practicing with Emily and the Royal Guard, his initial skepticism slowly giving way to admiration for their dedication. Though he still struggled with some of the finer details of the ceremonial movements, he was determined to improve. Each session brought new challenges, but also new insights. For the first time in his career, Alex realized that discipline wasn't just about following orders, it was about understanding the purpose behind them. One morning, as Alex joined the others for a group rehearsal, Captain Harper gathered everyone together for a quick pep talk. This ceremony is more than just a display of military precision, he said, his voice steady and commanding. It's a symbol of unity among nations. Every step you take, every salute you give, represents not only your country but also the bonds we share. Alex listened intently, his usual scowl softening into a thoughtful expression. He glanced at Emily, who stood nearby, her posture as perfect as always. She caught his eye briefly and gave him an encouraging nod. It was a small gesture, but it meant a lot. Over the past week, their relationship had shifted from adversarial to something closer to camaraderie. Alex no longer saw her as someone trying to undermine him. Instead, she had become a mentor, and perhaps even a friend. After Harper dismissed the group, Alex approached Emily. You think I'm ready? He asked, surprising himself with the vulnerability in his tone. Emily smiled reassuringly. You're getting there. Just remember to focus on the basics. If you stay calm and trust, The process, you'll be fine. Her words stuck with him throughout the day. As they rehearsed formations and practiced salutes, Alex tried to channel her advice. Instead of rushing through the movements or forcing perfection, he focused on staying present. Slowly, he began to feel a rhythm, a flow, that made the actions feel less mechanical and more natural. That evening, after another long day of training, Alex decided to take a walk around the castle grounds. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the ancient stone walls. He liked these quiet moments, when the chaos of preparation faded into the background and he could think clearly. But tonight, he wasn't alone for long. "Mind if I join? You?" Emily's voice came from behind him, breaking the silence. Alex turned and shrugged. "Suit yourself." They walked side by side, neither speaking at first. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of blooming flowers from the nearby gardens. Finally, Emily broke the silence. "How are you feeling about everything? Nervous?" Alex hesitated before answering. "Not nervous exactly. More aware. This whole thing has been a wake-up call for me. I thought I knew what discipline meant, but now I see there's more to it." Emily nodded, her expression thoughtful. It's easy to get caught up in thinking one way is better than another. But sometimes growth comes from blending different perspectives. "I guess I've been guilty of that," Alex admitted. "I came here thinking my way was the only way. Turns out I had a lot to learn." "And you're still learning," Emily added gently. "That's the important part. Nobody expects perfection overnight." Her words struck a chord with Alex. In his life, failure had always been unacceptable. Yet here was Emily, reminding him that mistakes weren't the end. They were stepping stones. "You're good at this," he said suddenly. "At teaching people, I mean. You have a way of making things make sense." Emily chuckled softly. "Thanks. I suppose it helps that I've been where you are, frustrated, unsure, doubting myself. If I can help someone else avoid those pitfalls, it's worth it." They continued walking, the conversation flowing more easily now. Alex found himself opening up in ways he hadn't expected. He talked about his childhood in Siberia, the harsh winters, and the strict upbringing that shaped him into the man he was today. Emily listened attentively, occasionally sharing stories of her own struggles growing up in a family steeped in military tradition. "You ever feel like you don't belong?" Alex asked abruptly, surprising even himself with the question. "All the time," Emily replied honestly. "Especially when I first joined. Everyone else seemed so confident, so sure of themselves. But over time I learned that belonging isn't about fitting in. It's about contributing, about finding your place within the team." Her response stayed with Alex long after their walk ended. That night, as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, he replayed their conversation in his mind. For years he had prided himself on being self-reliant, on standing apart from others. But Emily's words challenged that belief. Maybe strength wasn't about standing alone. It was about knowing when to lean on others. The next morning brought news that unsettled everyone. Rumors spread quickly among the delegates about potential security threats surrounding the ceremony. Some whispered about possible sabotage, while others speculated about protests or disruptions. Tensions ran high, and Alex noticed a change in the atmosphere. Even the usually unflappable Emily seemed uneasy. During a briefing, Captain Harper addressed the concerns head-on. "We're taking every precaution to ensure safety," he assured the group. "But I need each of you to remain vigilant. Report anything unusual immediately." As the meeting concluded, Alex lingered behind, waiting for Emily. When she emerged from the room, he fell into step beside her. "What do you think?" he asked quietly. "Do you believe the rumors?" Emily sighed, her usual composure faltering slightly. "I don't know. These kinds of events always attract attention, both good and bad. All we can do is prepare for the worst and hope for the best." "You sound worried," Alex observed. "Of course I'm worried," Emily admitted. "This isn't just about us. It's about protecting everyone involved. If something goes wrong, it reflects badly on all of us." Her honesty surprised him. Until now, he had seen her as unshakable, someone who never let fear show. But seeing her vulnerability made her seem more human, and strangely, more admirable. "If anyone can handle it, it's you," Alex said firmly. "And if you need help, I'm here." Emily looked at him, her eyes widening slightly in surprise. Then she smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Thank you, Alex. That means a lot." For the rest of the day, Alex threw himself into preparations with renewed determination. He reviewed emergency protocols, checked equipment, and volunteered for additional patrols around the castle grounds. His actions didn't go unnoticed. Several members of the Royal Guard complimented his initiative, and even Captain Harper gave him an approving nod. Later that evening, as Alex sat in the mess hall eating dinner, Emily joined him unexpectedly. "I heard about your efforts today," she said, sitting down across from him. "People are impressed." "I'm just doing my job," Alex replied, though he couldn't hide the hint of pride in his voice. "It's more than that," Emily insisted. "You stepped up when it mattered. That says a lot about your character." Alex shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "Let's just say I've learned a few things since I got here. About teamwork, about trust, and about humility," Emily teased lightly. He smirked. "Maybe a little." They shared a laugh, the tension of the day easing slightly. For Alex, it was a reminder of how far he'd come in such a short time. When he first arrived at Windsor Castle, he had been skeptical, defensive and resistant to change. Now he was beginning to understand the value of collaboration and the importance of letting go of pride when necessary. As they finished their meal, Emily leaned forward slightly. "Whatever happens tomorrow, we'll face it together, okay?" Alex met her gaze and nodded. "Okay." In that moment, Alex felt a sense of belonging he hadn't experienced in years. For the first time, he truly understood what Emily had meant about finding your place within the team. And as he prepared for the challenges ahead, he knew one thing for certain: he wasn't alone anymore. The morning of the ceremony dawned bright and clear, with sunlight streaming through the windows of Windsor Castle. The air buzzed with energy as soldiers from different nations prepared for the day ahead. Uniforms were inspected, boots polished to a mirror shine, and final rehearsals conducted to ensure everything would run smoothly. Despite the excitement, there was an undercurrent of tension. Everyone knew the stakes were high. Alex woke early, his mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. He had spent weeks preparing for this moment, but now that it was here, he couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The rumors about potential threats lingered in the back of his mind, casting a shadow over the otherwise festive atmosphere. Still, he pushed those worries aside and focused on the task at hand. Today wasn't just about him. It was about representing his country and proving that he could rise to the occasion. After dressing in his uniform, Alex made his way to the assembly area where the participants were gathering. Emily was already there, overseeing last-minute adjustments and offering words of encouragement to nervous recruits. When she spotted Alex, she gave him a small smile. "Ready?" she asked. "As ready as I'll ever be," Alex replied, forcing a grin. Truthfully, he felt anything but ready, but he trusted Emily's guidance and reminded himself of all the hard work they'd put into preparing for this day. The procession began shortly after, with representatives from each nation taking their positions. The grounds outside the castle were filled with spectators, dignitaries, journalists, and local residents eager to witness the historic event. Flags fluttered in the breeze, and the sound of distant music signaled the start of the ceremony, 4E. The first half of the event, everything went according to plan. The formations were flawless, the salutes sharp, and the movements synchronized. Alex moved with the group, focusing intently on every step and gesture. Though he still felt out of place among the ceremonial soldiers, he held his own, earning approving glances from Emily and Captain Harper. But then, halfway through the ceremony, chaos erupted. A loud buzzing noise cut through the air, drawing everyone's attention skyward. A drone hovered above the crowd, its presence unexpected and alarming. Gasps rippled through the audience, followed by shouts of confusion. Security forces scrambled to respond, but the sudden commotion threw the carefully choreographed event into disarray. Alex immediately sprang into action. Years of combat training kicked in, overriding any hesitation. He scanned the area, assessing potential threats and identifying safe zones. Nearby, Emily stood frozen for a split second before regaining her composure. "Stay calm," she called out to the group, her voice steady despite the panic around them. Alex turned to her. "We need to get people out of here. Now." Emily nodded, trusting his instincts. Together, they worked to coordinate an evacuation plan. While some guards attempted to neutralize the drone, others helped usher dignitaries and civilians toward safety. Amidst the chaos, Alex took charge, directing traffic and ensuring no one was left behind. "Move quickly, but don't panic," he shouted, guiding a group of frightened attendees toward the castle gates. His commanding tone cut through the noise, bringing order to the situation. Meanwhile, Emily stayed close to the remaining delegates, making sure none of them were separated or injured. She kept one eye on Alex, impressed by how seamlessly he transitioned into leadership mode. Despite his earlier struggles with protocol, he proved himself invaluable in this crisis. As the minutes ticked by, the security team managed to disable the drone using specialized equipment. Once the immediate threat was neutralized, Captain Harper stepped forward to address the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. The situation is under control. We will resume the ceremony shortly." Though shaken, the audience slowly returned to their seats, murmuring quietly amongst themselves. Behind the scenes, however, the tension remained palpable. Guards exchanged worried glances, and the organizers debated whether continuing the event was wise. Alex approached Emily, his expression grim. "Do you think we should keep going? This might not be over." "I agree," Emily said, lowering her voice. "But canceling now would send the wrong message. We need to show resilience. If we let fear dictate our actions, we lose more than just the ceremony." Her words resonated with Alex. He realized that the true test of strength wasn't avoiding danger. It was facing it head-on and refusing to back down. "All right," he said finally. "Let's finish what we started." With renewed determination, the participants regrouped and resumed their positions. The second half of the ceremony proceeded without further incidents, though the mood had shifted from celebratory to solemn. Each movement carried added weight, symbolizing not just tradition but also perseverance in the face of adversity. When the final salute was given and the ceremony concluded, applause erupted from the audience. It was subdued but heartfelt, a testament to the courage displayed by everyone involved. As the participants filed off the field, Alex caught Emily's eye and gave her a nod of gratitude. Without her calm demeanor and strategic thinking, things could have spiraled out of control. Later that evening, a debriefing session was held to discuss the incident. Captain Harper praised the efforts of everyone who had contributed to restoring order, singling out Alex for his quick thinking and leadership. "Lieutenant Ivanov played a crucial role today," Harper said, addressing the group. "His ability to adapt under pressure exemplifies the spirit of cooperation we strive for." Alex accepted the compliment awkwardly, unused to being recognized publicly. But deep down he felt a sense of pride, not just in himself but in the entire team. They had faced a challenge together and emerged stronger because of it. After the meeting ended, Emily sought him out. "You did well today," she said simply. "So did you," Alex replied. "If it weren't for your focus, I don't know if we'd have pulled it off." They stood there for a moment, both aware of how much had changed since Alex's arrival. What had begun as a clash of personalities had evolved into mutual respect, and perhaps something deeper. Neither of them voiced it aloud, but the bond they shared was undeniable. As they parted ways for the night, Alex reflected on the journey he'd undertaken. Coming to Windsor Castle, he had expected to assert his authority and prove his superiority. Instead, he had learned humility, teamwork, and the importance of trust. He hadn't just grown as a soldier, he had grown as a person. And for the first time in years, Alex felt truly proud, not of his rank or accomplishments, but of the connections he had forged along the way. The day after the ceremony, the atmosphere at Windsor Castle was quieter but no less charged. Soldiers and delegates moved about with a mix of relief and lingering tension, unpacking equipment and discussing what had happened. Though the drone incident had been resolved without major harm, its shadow loomed large over everyone's thoughts. For Alex, the events of the previous day replayed in his mind like a film he couldn't pause. He kept thinking about the choices he'd made, the people he'd worked with, and how much had changed since his arrival. As he walked through the castle grounds that morning, Alex noticed Emily sitting on a bench near the garden. She looked, deep in thought, her gaze fixed on the distant trees swaying gently in the breeze. Something about her posture, calm yet reflective, made him hesitate before approaching. But curiosity got the better of him, and he stepped closer. "You okay?" he asked, his tone softer than usual. Emily glanced up, surprised to see him. "Yeah, I'm fine," she replied, giving him a small smile. "Just thinking." "About yesterday?" Alex guessed. She nodded. "It's not every day you face something like that. Makes you realize how fragile these moments can be." Alex sat down beside her, feeling an unexpected urge to open up. "I've been thinking about it too, about how we handled it, and how much I learned from all of you." Emily raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Learned? From us?" "Don't act so surprised," Alex said with a faint smirk. "Before I came here, I thought I had everything figured out, that my way was the only way. Turns out, I didn't know half, as much as I thought." Her expression softened and she chuckled lightly. "Well, I wouldn't say half. You knew plenty. You just needed perspective." "Perspective," Alex repeated, rolling the word around in his mind. It fit. Everything he'd experienced at Windsor Castle, the discipline, the teamwork, the trust, had given him a new lens through which to view the world. And Emily had been at the center of it all, guiding him without ever making him feel inferior. "Thanks for that," he added quietly, "for helping me see things differently." "You helped yourself," Emily countered. "All I did was point you in the right direction. The rest was up to you." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching leaves drift lazily to the ground. After a moment, Emily spoke again. "So, what's next for you? Once this assignment is over, I mean." Alex shrugged, leaning back against the bench. "Back to Russia, I suppose. Same old duties, same old routines, but—" He paused, searching for the right words. "But maybe with a different mindset. A better one." Emily smiled warmly. "That's all anyone can hope for. To keep growing, even when it's hard." Later that afternoon, Captain Harper called Alex into his office for a private meeting. The room was cozy but formal, with shelves lined with books and framed photographs of past ceremonies. Harper gestured for Alex to take a seat before speaking. "Lieutenant Ivanov, I wanted to personally thank you for your actions during yesterday's incident. Your leadership under pressure made a significant difference." Alex shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Praise wasn't something he handled easily, especially from someone of Harper's rank. "Sir, I was just doing my job," he said, keeping his voice steady. "And you did it exceptionally well," Harper replied firmly. "Not many people could have stepped up the way you did, especially given the circumstances. It speaks volumes about your character." The compliment caught Alex off guard. He hadn't expected such recognition, let alone gratitude. "Thank you, sir," he managed, unsure what else to say. Harper leaned forward slightly, his expression serious but kind. "I also want to acknowledge how far you've come since arriving here. Lieutenant Dawson has spoken highly of your progress, not just in mastering our protocols, but in adapting to a culture vastly different from your own. That takes humility, and humility is a rare quality among soldiers." Alex felt a surge of pride, not for himself, but for the acknowledgement of growth. He thought back to his first days at the castle when he'd been so quick to judge and dismiss others' ways of doing things. Now he understood that strength wasn't about dominance, it was about learning, listening, and evolving. "I appreciate your words, sir," Alex said sincerely. "This experience has taught me more than I ever anticipated." Harper nodded, approvingly. "Then consider it a success for both you and us. We're honored to have had you here." After the meeting ended, Alex left the office feeling lighter, as if a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. He realized that coming to Windsor Castle hadn't just been an assignment, it had been a turning point, one that would stay with him long after he returned home. That evening, a farewell dinner was held in the main hall to celebrate the conclusion of the coalition mission. The room was alive with laughter and conversation, the earlier tensions forgotten, for now. Soldiers from different nations mingled freely, exchanging stories and sharing memories. At one table, Alex found himself seated alongside Emily, Daniel Hughes, and several other members of the Royal Guard. As the meal progressed, Captain Harper stood up to make a speech. "Today marks the end of an extraordinary chapter," he began, raising his glass. "We faced challenges, yes, but we overcame them together, to unity, resilience, and the friendships forged along the way." The room erupted in applause, glasses clinking as everyone toasted to the sentiment. When the noise died down, Emily turned to Alex with a mischievous glint in her eye. "Your turn," she said. "Say something." Alex froze, caught off guard by the request. Public speaking wasn't his strong suit, and he didn't feel like he had much to add. But seeing the expectant looks from those around him, he reluctantly stood up, clearing his throat. "I'm not great at speeches," he admitted, earning a few chuckles. "But I do want to say this. Coming here, I didn't think I'd learn anything. I thought I already knew everything I needed to know. Turns out I was wrong." He paused, scanning the faces of the people who had welcomed him, even when he hadn't deserved it. "You taught me the value of tradition, of working together, and of trusting others. I'll carry those lessons with me wherever I go. So, thank you for everything." The room erupted in applause again, louder this time. Alex sat back down, feeling oddly exposed, but also strangely fulfilled. Beside him, Emily grinned. "Not bad," she teased, "for someone who hates speeches." "Don't push it," Alex muttered, though he couldn't hide his own smile. Before leaving Windsor Castle the next morning, Alex packed his belongings, slowly, taking in the details of the room that had become familiar over the weeks. As he zipped up his duffel bag, there was a knock at the door. Opening it, he found Emily standing there, holding a small box wrapped in plain paper. "What's this?" he asked, accepting the gift cautiously. "A token of appreciation," Emily explained. "Open it later." Curiosity burned inside him, but Alex resisted the urge to peek. Instead, he tucked the box into his bag and extended a hand. "Thank you for everything. I won't forget what you've done for me." Emily shook his hand firmly, then pulled him into a brief hug, a gesture that surprised him but felt oddly fitting. "Take care of yourself, Alex, and don't be a stranger." "I'll try," he promised, stepping back. "And hey, if you're ever in Russia, I'll look you up," Emily finished, smiling. With that, Alex shouldered his bag and walked away, casting one last glance at the castle before climbing into the transport vehicle. As the vehicle pulled away, he opened the box Emily had given him. Inside was a small pin bearing the emblem of the Royal Guard, accompanied by a note: "Honor and unity." Touched, Alex pinned it to the inside of his jacket, where it would remain close to his heart. He didn't fully understand why Emily had chosen to give it to him, but he knew it symbolized something greater than words could express. Back in Russia, Alex recounted his experiences to his fellow Marines, sharing stories of the Royal Guard's discipline, Emily's wisdom, and the lessons he'd learned. His colleagues listened intently, some skeptical, others inspired. Through it all, Alex carried the knowledge that true strength came not from asserting rank or superiority, but from embracing humility, building connections, and striving to grow. And somewhere across the globe, Emily smiled, knowing she had played a part in shaping a better leader, one who understood that respect wasn't earned by shouting orders but by earning trust, one step at a time.